Am I going to be the speech pathologist that has to use her eyes to communicate? Am I going to be the speech pathologist relying on her phone to do text-to-speech to communicate with other people? Those thoughts spiraling out of my head for a month on end was, I don't even know if terrifying is the strong enough word to describe it.
Welcome back to the Mercy Cast, where we are learning the art of compassion through the adversity of life. I'm your host, Raleigh Sadler. So many of us have been through things that we don't want to face. We don't want to talk about. We brush it under the rug. We hide it in the closet. If we can get it out of eyesight, then it's no longer there. But the problem is, it's there. It's looming. It's lumbering. It's watching us. We know in the back of our mind that it's not been dealt with. And that starts to encroach on all these other aspects of our life. But we think as long as we don't see it, as long as we don't face it, we're going to be okay. And that's not how this works. And what I've found is sometimes things happen in our lives that minimize us. Some people may say things over us that at a low point in our lives, we believe that what they're saying is true, and we're not believing what we know to be true. And it's in those moments that we start to lose our voice. It's in those moments that we start to lose our identity. It's in those moments that we start to live into others' expectations and what others say about us rather than what we know to be true. And so today, I want to talk about what it means to reclaim your voice. I want to talk about what it means to see your life restored and to take control of who you are. Today, I am joined by Vanessa Abraham. She is a certified speech pathologist, an acclaimed author, a speaker, and a certified NewFit practitioner. Her new book, Speechless: How a Speech Therapist Lost Her Ability to Speak and Her Silent Struggle to Reclaim Her Voice and Her Life, is available now. And so with that said, Vanessa, welcome to the Mercy Cast.
Hi, nice to be here.
I love this idea of reclaiming your voice and the fact that you are a speech therapist and you know a ton about people reclaiming their voices in a quite literal way.
I know it inside and out better than most.
What was it like to be a speech pathologist who lost her voice?
I can sum it up in one word: terrifying. To be the patient in the bed, unable to communicate after being the therapist, helping people communicate, helping them find a modality to help them communicate, whether it's through picture symbols or a text-to-speech device, or even eye gaze, which was what I was using too, just communicating with my eyes because I couldn't move my body. It was an absolute surreal experience, one that I never want to live through again, nor did I ever think I would be that person. The journey to finding my voice again and finding that vocal was nothing short of terrifying.
You mentioned it being terrifying. You mentioned never wanting to experience it again. What made it feel that way for you?
The anxiety, the what if. What if this is my forever? What if I will never be a verbal communicator again? What if, those what ifs, they start spiraling out of control in your head and you start believing some of these thoughts. Is this my forever? Am I going to be the speech pathologist that has to use her eyes to communicate? Am I going to be the speech pathologist relying on her phone to do text-to-speech to communicate with other people? Those thoughts spiraling out of my head for a month on end was, I don't even know if terrifying is the strong enough word to describe it.
It sounds like your identity was in question in that moment. Like, who am I if this is true? Do you think so? Is that resonating?
I talk about that in my book. My identity was robbed from me overnight. I went to sleep a fine, healthy, young mom, active, living life to the fullest. And overnight, my identity was stripped away from me and I could no longer drive. I could no longer work. I could no longer talk. I could no longer eat food. I could no longer hold my baby. I could no longer do everything I did the week, day, night before. Terrifying.
And it just happened. It's like someone flipped.
I went to bed one night and woke up the next morning feeling like I had a really bad case of the flu, maybe a bad cold. And as typical for me, I would, 2 days from now, 3 days, I'll start feeling human again. Just give me a few days to rest. And that didn't happen. As time progressed, I kept getting worse to the point that I was pretty breathy and my vocal quality was diminishing. was just getting a lot of nausea, vomiting, aches and pains, just some weird symptoms that just weren't going away. And within 7 days, I was in the ICU, intubated, and this paralysis was slowly creeping over my body.
You must have felt out of control in that moment.
Out of control, no control. And that's scary too. Not being in control of my body and what was happening, not knowing what was going on. I felt out of control. I was scared, terrified, lost myself. I wanted to talk. I wanted to advocate for myself. I wanted to say, what's going on? What's my prognosis? What's my baby doing? Is she okay? Does she need me? Everything was stripped from me. My identity, even when I got out of the ICU and came home from rehab, I remember feeling like I no longer fit into this world. I once was this mom that was doing play dates and eating food with my family at the dinner table to now being the mom laying in bed, profoundly depressed, tube fed, and I couldn't eat dinner even with my family. Not only my voice and my ability to communicate, but who I was just gone.
In one evening, you go to bed one way, the next day, it's all falling apart.
And that's when the depression hits you. That was something that I dealt with and continue to deal with because you have visions. You go to bed at night thinking tomorrow I'm going to wake up and do this and I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to wake up and have a cup of coffee and have breakfast with my family. And then you wake up and that's not your reality. There comes a point in time where you have to start accepting this, but yet you don't want to accept it.
Right.
You're angry, you're frustrated, and you want to fight back because you don't want this, but you have to, in a crazy way, accept where you are. But that's when the depression hits you because this is not my life.
We all assume that we're going to have the next day. We all assume that we're going to have that next conversation with a family member. We all assume and presuppose that things are going to happen like they've happened every other day previous. And then when we're struck by tragedy or something that drastically interrupts our lives, losing oneself in that moment, it can feel completely unmanageable. We can feel completely lost. And it sounds like you were processing a lot of pain and you couldn't communicate it.
Pain and grief. Grief is the big one too. I was bombarded with so many feelings, the loss of self, the grief, the depression, the anxiety. There's just so much going through you. And to process all of that, it feels larger than you. Sometimes you just feel like the easier way out is suicide. The easier way out is to escape this because it's all greater than me. And those were real thoughts for me as well.
And you're tapping into something that I think a lot of us feel. At some point in our lives, there's been a moment where we feel too much. There's too much happening in our lives and we can't grapple with it. We're overwhelmed. That is when dark thoughts can arise. That is when the fear of it just has to stop. Like, I just want these feelings, these emotions, this pressure, whatever it is that you're experiencing in that moment to stop. As you have processed through what you went through, how do we handle those moments when we feel too much? What are some things that we could do when everything feels like it's out of control?
I was having this conversation just today. I've had a lot of mental health therapy for this thing called post-intensive care syndrome. It's the PTSD that we deal with as ICU survivors. They've thrown a lot of strategies out there to me. The big one is gratitude, trying to focus on things that you're grateful for. Stop, look around, count things that smell good. Look at nature. Presence is a big one, just thinking about the here and now, ground yourself. Deep breaths. Something for me that's very triggering is when I see ambulances. I rode in 3 different ambulances, and there was one point when I was hallucinating on medications. They are big triggers for me, and I have to remind myself every single time I see them, and I kid you not, I saw 2 just today. I was out running errands, and I passed 2 ambulances. Each time I see them, my hands grip the steering wheel. I get a little perspiration on my hands and I kind of get teary-eyed and I kind of quiver a little bit. But I have to remind myself, this is them. This is me. This is their story. Whoever's in that ambulance, this is their story. This is not mine. And I have to remind myself that ambulance is not here for me this time. It's a constant mind game of having to remind myself, okay, presence. That was me 6 years ago in that ambulance. This is Vanessa now. Now I'm actually in my own car driving. I am not riding in that ambulance.
And we'll call her the now Vanessa. I think the now Vanessa has this cool role to play because when you get triggered, the now Vanessa gets to step in and say, "You are okay. I love you. You're going to be all right." Because I feel like I've never said it like that, but it's like the present Raleigh, like sometimes some past stuff will just come back up and it's like I'm right there again. It's like I'm back. It's like nothing changed. The person that's grown, the man that I've become, I'm able to look back and be like, okay, that was unfortunate and awful that that happened. But you are okay. You are safe. You are loved. Come back. Come
Hmm.
back. And I think that helps me be present. What are some things that you've done to kind of ground yourself in those moments when you hear the ambulance? You're taken right back to that moment. What are some things that you do?
You know, first and foremost, I try to not be near it on the street. If it's on the left side, I go to the right side. If it's turning right, I try to turn left. But again, just reminding myself that that ambulance is not here for me this time. I am much better. I'm healthy. I try to remember my inner kids. I think about my inner kids and how terrified they are. I have to do, like you just said, I'm safe. I'm not in the hospital setting. I'm not covered in tubes. I'm not intubated. I am no longer tube fed. I am okay. I am safe and I'm healing. But it's a mind game. It's not easy. It's not like I can just snap my fingers and I feel fine. It's work in progress.
Well, in a sense, it's us reparenting ourselves. This idea of being the person now that you needed then. And you're able to go to those inner kids, that part of you that is scared, that part of you that's hurt, and say, "You're safe. You're loved. I'm here.
Mm.
No one's going to hurt you."
I try to give myself a lot of comfort, just little things throughout the day. This may seem really strange, but what brings me comfort? And I was texting a friend about this because we got on the subject of anxiety and things that are going on with our own children. I said, today I'm going to try to focus on things that bring me comfort, that make me feel comfortable. I said, for right now, in this moment, I'm eating an egg burrito and it's so delicious. And I'm going to follow it with a cup of iced coffee because iced coffee for me just feels really comforting and calming. And those two things together were just a nice, soothing way for me to start my day. Some people may want to just go out for a walk in the morning, but finding that thing for you that is comfort, whether it's a soft blanket, a hot shower, any sensory experience, maybe it's walking outside barefoot, grounding in the nice cool grass, just something that gives you that comfort.
No, that is really, really good. It's kind of like taking a time out, taking a moment, reconnecting. In those moments where we feel like everything is unmanageable and out of control and uncertain, it's so easy to play the worst case scenario card. I'll never talk again. I'll never be able to eat a meal with my family. I'll never be able to have a long conversation. So, in that moment with that fear, what was it like for you as time went on? How was that fear affected in the next coming weeks?
I kept trying to remind myself that your thoughts become who you are. And I'm not saying it was easy for me, but I have to constantly, even today, 6 years after my medical trauma, that I need to change my thought process because that's a big part of healing, recovery. I'm not the most optimistic, positive person, and especially when I became ill, I was doom and gloom. The world's coming to an end. This is my forever. Please pull the plug from the machines. I don't want this to be my life. Give me my car keys. I know I can't drive, but I want to end my life and drive off a cliff. And constantly reminding myself, okay, you are healing. You have a diagnosis that isn't life threatening. You are going to get better. Yes, it's going to be slow. I need to work on my mental health. I would also listen to a lot of podcasts that were people like me that were healing and on this journey to find the 2.0. So I joke that maybe I'm Vanessa 2.0 now. But it's been work mentally to try to keep my thought process in the right place. Because if not, sometimes your thought process, you start spiraling out of control and you go down these dark holes, and that leads to really bad places.
Your thoughts become your actions, actions become your behaviors. That stuff can funnel into your identity. And it starts with what we think. And if we think we're garbage, then we're going to see garbage results. If we're just self loathing all the time, then when we look at ourselves, we're not going to be able to see ourselves as our friends see us, as God sees us, as other people see us. We're going to see ourselves through this lens of disgust. We're going to see ourselves through this lens of frustration and not enoughness. What you're saying is that we've got to change that. It's a mental game. We've got to look at what we are thinking and start there. Even if we can't speak, we still have thoughts. We are still conscious at that point. And I think that consciousness matters for people who are kind of stuck in that spiral of negative thoughts turning into negative behaviors. What would you say to them?
That's a good question. I think if you have somebody holding you accountable, helps. I've had a support group through my whole journey that I log in. It's a virtual support group for post ICU survivors that are dealing with a lot of the things that I'm dealing with. And having them hold you accountable, at least for me, that's been huge. I can contact any of these people that are all over the world, and I'll tell them things that are going on, and they'll be like, well, Vanessa, look at this, or think about this, or why don't you try that? Something I've noticed too, back to the conversation of just our thoughts and how they become us, our thoughts also can bleed into the people around us. And I've had to become very aware of how what I'm experiencing affects my child, because now she's showing signs of certain things going on with her that I think that's my trauma, and she's seeing too much of me. So I have to be very aware of what I'm showing because I'm her greatest role model. She learns so much from me. So I'm having to become more aware of my thought processes and how my thought processes and how I behave is bleeding into my own child now.
Yeah, it's like nothing stays private for too long. The stuff we're dealing with, we think sometimes it's just about us. It overflows into all of our relationships and it impacts them. I bet that was a tricky realization when you had that.
I actually recently had this conversation with my daughter's doctor because there's some things going on with her. I told him my concern is that some of the things that she's presenting with are a result of the conversation she's hearing from me. My book launched 2 months ago, so we're talking in my family a lot about my book and a lot of the traumas that came up with my book. So she's hearing a lot of conversations right now, and she's young, so she can't really process a lot of it or understand it. But I think some of the things that she's exhibiting are just little internal young people anxieties. So again, I have to remind myself, again, these mental games of constantly reminding myself, okay, think about how you're affecting that ripple effect again, those around you.
And I think there's a way to do that from a standpoint of kindness, kindness to
Mhm.
yourself. Rather than seeing yourself as a bad person, you see yourself as a person who's been through a thing. And then you are able to know that, well, okay, what happens to me impacts the people that love me because they're close. And that secondary trauma, that vicarious trauma thing is a very real thing. When someone goes through something really hard and you love them and you care about them, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, but I do know that sometimes your brain thinks it happened to you. I love what you're saying about it is something to be cognizant of because a lot of people, they go through something hard and think, if I just get this out, if I just share this to this person, it'll be okay. But we also need to think there are people who are better equipped to handle certain things. Like I've had friends going through heavy times where I was like, I love you, but I am your friend, not your therapist. I don't have the capacity right now, but I will be there for you. I can pray about it. But right now, I knew myself well enough to know that if I took that on, it would really mess me up. I wasn't 100% and I just didn't have the capacity to do it. But I said, what I can do is I can walk with you, I can encourage you, but I really think you need to talk to someone who's trained, a therapist who can have enough emotional distance to help you process the real emotions you're feeling. Have you ever had to do that with anybody?
No, but other people have had to have that with me, my husband in particular, of, hey, this is not my area of expertise. And I think you said a good point of just being present with that person, like, hey, I'm here for you. I can hold your hand through this. However, I am not equipped to give any advice on how to handle medical trauma, especially with what I've been through. Nobody really is making that connection that medical experiences and being in the ICU, fighting for your life, learning to talk, breathe, move, swallow food again is traumatic. And a lot of people, when you get out of these situations, they just are like, I don't know what to do with you. I know you're depressed. But like you said, just being present, being there for that person, holding their hand. It's okay to say, I don't know what to do. I don't understand this. You need some help. I'm here to help you find someone.
There it is. That's help right there. It's like you can push people away or you can sit with a minute and say, hey, let me help you find what you need. I think that is something that any of us can do.
100%. Just being there for the person. Nobody knows how to fix what I have. People are very uncomfortable with being around people too that are not well. I've learned that. I'm going to come to your house. We're going to sit, watch a movie together.
Yeah.
That's huge. PICS family, I talk about this a lot. Post-intensive care family. That is what family members go through. Seeing a lot of that trauma and what they have gone through and what they are experiencing as family members is real too.
Absolutely. What you're experiencing is real. What they're experiencing is real. You've mentioned how the family members, the support groups, the people who know what you're experiencing are involved in your life too. I think that is helpful because, yes, we can have friends walking with us, but also finding people who have gone through or going through something similar. That helps us because they know exactly what we're experiencing. And we're not necessarily adding to their burden. We're supporting each other. And it sounds like you really worked hard on having that influence in your life.
It's about the community of people that understand you, the support groups, being around people that get it for me was probably what kept me alive, honestly. And my daughter, because I didn't want her growing up without a mom. But when I went from working full time, raising a child, wife, hiking mountains, gym life to, okay, I'm paralyzed, tube fed. My husband has to get me in the shower. I can't even toilet myself. It was all gone. And knowing that every week there was a support group that I could log into, that there were people like me, not necessarily with my same diagnosis, but fighting for life and understand the trauma of coming back home and trying to find yourself again was life changing.
Because you're not alone.
No, we are not alone. There's, whether it's medical, whether it's something else, we all need our community. We need our people around us. That was what was so hard about COVID, is that we were all separated. Nobody was allowed to mingle. And when that happens, depression gets worse. And when you're coming out of ICU, you're already depressed. You're already like isolated because you went from this category. Now you're in this category and you can't drive, you can't eat, you can't drink, you can't move. And then you're just so isolated. And it's such a profoundly depressing experience. Finding that community is what gets you through those dark moments.
Yeah. Because I think that's what happens when you're going through something like that. You feel alone, you feel defeated. You feel like you don't have a voice. Sometimes those thoughts creep in that you don't matter. Why are you even here? And when you're around community, there's hope because there's always someone a little bit farther down the road than you that's able to say, hold on. It's not always going to feel this way. Hold on. I know what you're feeling is immense. I know it's awful. I know it's bad. It's not going to feel this way in a month. It's not going to feel this way in 6 months. Embrace it, face the hurt, but it's not always going to feel that way. When I've had people talk to me like that, it is always helpful. Even if I don't want to listen to it, I somehow hear it. I'm like, okay, in time it comes out. But I want to know. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. And I'm also noticing, and I want to be very cognizant of the fact that I'm actually talking to you. I
Yes.
hear your voice. So
Yep.
since that's happening, I know something shifted. We've talked about the darkness, the fear, the anxiety. Tell me about when it started to shift for you and what it looked like immediately following.
So are you talking about the shift in wanting to live and the attitude shift or?
Getting your voice back in every way.
Okay, so getting the voice back was, I often tell people I think childbirth was actually easier than learning to communicate vocally again. The work that went into it. Eventually, I started out using eye gaze, so I was only communicating by looking right or left or up or down. And then I was able to progress to text to speech. And I used in my book, I talk about it heavily of the communication breakdowns that I had. I had a piece of paper with alphabet board on it. But the final step was communicating verbally. And that's when on my tracheostomy tube, they put this thing called a passimere valve on. And that valve is what allows you to vocalize, just making that noise. It was the most horrific, scary, exhausting, physically exhausting process I could have ever imagined. Probably one of the hardest things that I have physically ever done in my life. It was terribly scary. As you can see now, I don't have any type of medical equipment on me helping me communicate, but the process was very slow. It wasn't something that I just was able to acquire overnight. It was a couple weeks of using that valve to communicate. As a speech pathologist, I used every modality of communication for people that are nonverbal. Being on the other side was terrifying. When I was able to finally communicate, that's when a lot of voice therapy came into play. My vocal cords, since they were so damaged from nerve damage, I had a lot of voice therapy. It's been a long process.
Yeah. And I think even hearing that, that's a positive thing because I think sometimes we want the quick fix. We want everything to work itself out right now. And it's okay to go the long way around, I think. Do you think there were some lessons you learned while you were going the long way around on your
Oh,
pathway to healing?
lots of lessons, patience. Yeah, we all want the one and done treatment. Who doesn't? Who doesn't want to fall down and break their leg and then tomorrow it be fine? Everybody wants the one and done. And what I experienced wasn't something that, oh, go home and rest and you'll be fine. It was a lot of work, years. I'm still rehabilitating. I'm still trying to get strong again, still trying to find myself in this new body. But it's been a lot of work. Didn't come easily.
No, it doesn't sound that way at all. It sounds like you worked towards this goal, but again, you had a goal. You didn't give up. What do you think kept you from giving up?
Big one was my daughter. I kept her picture right in front of me every waking moment of every day. I thought, what is her life going to be like if she doesn't have me? I wanted a child more than anything in this world, and I finally was given this gift. The idea of not seeing her grow up, learn to read, ride a bike, drive a car, get married, have children of her own, terrified me more than my diagnosis itself. And that just kept me going. But it was hard. There were times that the pain was so great that the easier way out would have been to end it, but that wasn't the solution. I somehow knew in my head that that's not the solution. I don't want to do this to my family. Part of me still wanted to live, even though the journey was not easy to find myself again.
Yeah, I think that desire to stay alive, that's important because when we have stuff coming at us from every direction, it can be so overwhelming, but you still had that. And you fought for your daughter. You fought to make it to where you are now. And so now, as someone who has regained her voice, not only literally, but also figuratively, you've written a book. You have regained your voice. You're speaking out to others. What is the core truth that you want people to know? It doesn't have to just be one thing, but what's the message that you're putting out in the world right now?
Boy, I could come up with a dozen lessons. Have faith, believe, find something that is going to help you live in the moment, want to live for tomorrow. There's just so many things that I have learned in my own journey about myself and finding reasons and things that work for me that gave me that hope. Like I said, that community of supporters, people around me, finding things every day that fill me up, that give me hope, whether it's that egg burrito like I had in a cup of iced coffee, or just buying yourself a new pair of shoes, or snuggling up and watching a movie with a soft blanket. There's so much beauty and goodness in the world, and trying to find those things is so important. Sometimes I just drive down the street and I have to stop and say, wow, look at those puffy white clouds. How beautiful is that? Look at that bird. Look at those trees with the wind blowing through them. Not saying it's been easy, but trying to do those things is just so important because there's so much beauty around us. There's so much goodness and kindness in people. We just have to look for it.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
talk of the community that supported me in the ICU, my team, the goodness of my doctor, the things that he did and how much he impacted me. He impacted me so much, his goodness and kindness, not only his medical treatment, but just his kindness and who he is. He wrote the foreword of my book just because he had such an impact on me and what he did for my husband and I in the ICU. It was transformative.
It's so easy when we're suffering to focus on the negative, to focus on what was taken away. And you're talking about looking for those little blessings, glimmers of hope. There's always some tiny glimmer, and it may not be that big, but being thankful for it, being able to see that roots us. It's like we're able to find that glimmer and be like, okay, today we had a good conversation. Today I got a burrito. You're able to find that little moment of hope and say, okay, I'm going to center on that. I think this is so helpful because what I love about what you're saying is you're telling us this thing that happened that was real. You're telling us this thing that you accepted. This is what's happening. You're telling us about how you got community to come alongside of you and how you looked for those moments of encouragement. Because I think a lot of us, when we lose our voice, when we have that thing that happens that really just beats us down, it could be anything. But that moment where we start to feel like we're losing our identity, that we're losing who we are, being able to just find one foothold, one handhold, and then find the next. And then I'm not saying like we're climbing out by ourselves. No, we are roped in. We got someone on the belay. They're pulling us up as we're doing it. We're not alone. And I would say if we are people of faith, we believe that God is helping us in that. But we're not alone as we're doing this. And every one of us can lose our voice. Every one of us can lose our way. In these closing moments, is there a way that you would encourage our listeners to fight for their way back to finding their voice?
Big one that I would keep going back to is your community.
Yeah.
That to me is just life changing. We need community. We learned that through COVID, that we need each other. We need our people. We need people that when times are dark, we can lean on, we can call. That's been life-changing for me, having people around me. And that's also been something that's been really hard for me, learning who is my community. Because sometimes when you go through these dark times, your community changes. My community that I had before as a very thriving, physically fit, active mom, one that could participate in going out to dinner and happy hours and these things that these young moms would do, that was no longer me. So then my community shifted to a community of ICU supporters, people that were critically ill, people that have been through some type of trauma. When that shifted for me, they were there for me. They got me through it. So many people don't know how to be there for people that are critically ill. And they are the ones that help me find myself, find my identity, find my voice.
And you just tapped into it, I think. This idea that when we've been through something, we are more apt to care for people going through similar things because we know it. We've been there. And I think that kind of community is a beautiful thing because in those moments, we don't feel alone.
I have felt so alone in my journey. The isolation and grief following a critical illness, it transforms you. To find yourself, to find your voice, you need people around you that can pick you up out of those dark places, help you find your voice.
And that's what we're all trying to do here. We are all trying to regain our voices and stand on our own 2 feet and be who we were made to be. Vanessa, thank you so much for being on the MercyCast. How can we get your book?
It is all on Amazon, so you can go to Amazon, type in Speechless, or you can type in Speechless Vanessa Abraham. The book will come up. I can also be found on social media, Speechless_SLP at Instagram, or Speechless SLP on Facebook. SLP stands for Speech Language Pathologist. That's where you can follow me and purchase the book if interested.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Yep. Thank you.